Okay, we are back for part three of the Nourished Thyroid series. And today is all about the thyroid and hormone nutrition blueprint, probably one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm really excited to dive deeper into this. You're definitely going to want to take notes, and I am going to provide you with some helpful resources to actually help you implement things. Just as a quick recap, if you haven't watched video one and two, definitely go back and do that. But today, we are going to kind of build on what we've covered so far. So, in part one, we talked about what the thyroid actually does, how it impacts everything from your energy to your digestion to your periods to your fertility. We also talked about how some women don't even realize that they need to support their thyroid, or they're told that all of their thyroid labs look normal, and why they're actually not normal, especially if you're obviously symptomatic. So, we dove into that a little bit deeper. And then in part two, we talked about the most common mistakes that actually make symptoms worse. And a lot of these I feel like women do with the best of intentions. It's not the mistake of eating a super processed diet or not exercising at all. It's actually kind of the opposite, and doing things like low carb or intermittent fasting or not eating enough. So, I wanted to talk about those in case you are doing some of them. And we also talked about what to do instead. But now I'm going to give you more actual step by step for what to include in your actual nutrition plan. Because if you Google anything around how to eat for thyroid health, you'll probably find the basic recommendations of eat Brazil nuts for selenium and maybe go gluten free if you have Hashimoto's. But there's so much more to it than that. So, also, as a quick reminder, I did share this thyroid and metabolism tracker. This is like a assessment cheat sheet to kind of build out your baseline symptoms and give you a snapshot of what's actually going on with your metabolism and your thyroid. And I also talked about tracking BBT, which is basal body temperature. And that is honestly one of the best indicators that you can keep tabs on day to day, that tells you about what's going on with your thyroid and your metabolism, and also with your stress and stress hormones like cortisol, and also with your cycle and how you should see shifts with that throughout the month if your hormones are in balance. So, if you have not yet grabbed that, be sure to do so. And then today, what we're covering, like I said, is the nutrition framework for thyroid support. So, we're going to talk about how to nourish your thyroid and hormones with nutrition. And this is the nutrition framework that we use with clients who want to really understand how to nourish their body. They want to eat right for them, they want to support their female physiology and their hormones. And they don't want to follow these one size fits all diets, or they don't want to get stuck following trends that don't actually apply to them and what their body needs. And they want to truly keep their hormones supported and just feel like themselves again. So, whatever that looks like for you, this nutrition foundation that I'll talk about has to be laid before doing anything else. And whenever I support women with thyroid issues, whether it's fatigue, irregular cycles, short cycles, heavy, painful periods, skin issues, hair loss, mood swings, weight struggles, fertility challenges, all of these things that are connected so deeply to your thyroid, we always come back to these four key areas of nutrition. And I find a lot of women skip them, or they kind of do them, but they don't do them right, or they don't do them fully, or they don't do them consistently. So we need to talk about them. So, as an overview, the four key areas for thyroid support and overall hormone support, we know that to have healthy hormones, you have to have a healthy thyroid. And so, these four areas are energy intake. So, we're going to talk about calories, macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fats, micronutrients, which include both vitamins and minerals, one of my favorite things to talk about. And then also meal timing, because when you eat is just as important as what you eat and how much you eat, which leads me to part one, and that is energy intake. So, are you actually eating enough? And before you're like, yeah, definitely eating enough, I don't struggle with this, I want you to kind of hear me out on this, because I would say 99% of the women that come to us, if they're dealing with symptoms, they aren't eating enough of the right foods at the right time. And this is something that by adjusting, they see huge improvements, usually first and foremost with their energy and with their sleep. So, one of the most important but overlooked parts of thyroid support is how much you're eating. I wish that when clients went to their doctor's office and were told they were hypothyroidism, instead of being prescribed a drug right away. They were just told or evaluated as to, are you eating enough? But usually it's the opposite. It's usually, oh, you need to eat less and exercise more. But that's what actually makes you hypothyroid in the first place. So super counterproductive advice. And if your hormone doesn't have enough fuel, I want you to think of calories as energy. That's where we're getting our energy from. It's not going to make hormones. It's not going to prioritize something that is very energy intensive. And what I find that is under eating can be both intentional, which is what we typically think of if we're thinking about under eating, but it also is unintentional. And that's more commonly what we see in the types of clients who we work with. So if it's looking intentional, it's going to be, you're not eating a lot. You're trying to lose weight. You're trying to follow a plan. You're eating 15, 1,600 calories a day. Or in some cases, you're eating 1,200 calories a day. So this works for very fast, unsustainable, unhealthy weight loss. And then you regain it usually because your metabolism slows down, or you have to like really white knuckle your way to stick through it. But this is what it looks like intentionally. And then oftentimes it's unintentional. So this could be because you have a low appetite, you're stressed, you go long gaps in between meals, or you're just not actually realizing how much you need to feel good. It is something we are never taught. We don't learn it in school. We don't learn it from our parents or our mom or our grandma or our aunt. No one ever tells us that as a full grown menstruating female, you need around 2,500 calories, especially if you also enjoy working out and you are active. And so, one of the things that we find most often with women, like I mentioned, is they're unintentionally under eating. It's not because they're trying to diet, they've been there, done that, they know they don't like it, but it's because they're busy. They're skipping meals. Again, and it could be completely on accident. They're maybe eating really clean, healthy, whole foods, but they're not eating enough, or they're following advice that restricts calories or food groups. So, like I said in the last video, it could be low carb, or maybe you're trying to do vegetarian or vegan and you're intermittent fasting and you're cutting out these nutrient dense food sources. Or on the other hand, people will say, I'm eating enough because they think of the times when they're actually overeating, or maybe they're constantly snacking throughout the day. They're never satiated. They say they're always hungry. Or if they can't lose weight, they think that that's an overeating problem. But usually it's not. It's usually a metabolism and thyroid problem. And so the issue here is that they feel like they're overeating or they feel like they're eating enough, and that perception is there. But when we actually look at their food mood journal during the day and across an entire week or 2 weeks, we can see that they're actually not eating enough consistently during the day when their body needs it the most, when the sun is up, and they're not having solid meals. So they have like a salad with a little bit of chicken breast on it, or they have a small piece of pizza because they're trying to follow like a everything in moderation sort of advice, and a salad, right? That's not going to be eating enough. It might be calorically high, but it's not eating enough. So we want to look at eating solid meals that are filling and satiating, nutrient dense, and help to balance your blood sugar, which we'll talk about in a second. So, how do you know if you're under eating? I'm going to go through actual calculations that you can follow, but just some signs and symptoms to be aware of. A lot of these obviously align with hypothyroid symptoms as well. So, low energy, hair thinning, poor digestion, constipation. That's a huge one. If you're not pooping every day, you're probably under eating. Feeling cold, mood swings, anxiety, irritability, low libido, waking up in the middle of the night, and insomnia. That is usually one of the first things for me that tells me, hey, you didn't eat enough the day before. So paying attention to that. Sugar cravings or binge episodes where you're trying to be good and then you end up overeating, or you're around a certain food and you feel like there's no breaks, you just keep eating. Lack of appetite, or you're always hungry. It could go either way. Poor workout recovery, or frequent injuries. So if you work out, you should not feel exhausted and wiped out for the next few hours or for the rest of the day. Those workouts should be easy to recover from, and then you actually have energy to perform and do all of the other things in your day that you're supposed to do. Also, if you have a lot of inflammation, recurring injuries, you're always achy, maybe you're pulling stuff, that's a huge red flag as well. Another one that isn't here, but I just thought of, is constantly thinking about food. So if food is always on your mind and you wake up and you think about, when's my first meal, when's my next meal, a lot of food noise going on in your brain, you might not be eating enough consistently. So, how can we figure out if you're eating enough? I want to go through actual calculations and I'm going to give you some step by step in just a second. But as an overview, basically what you can do is track for 5 to 7 days to get a baseline. And you can use something like Chronometer is the app that we like to recommend. That syncs up with our client portal called Practice Better. So we like to do that because we can see the data on our end. MyFitnessPal is another really popular one, but you're just going to plug in your food intake for 5 to 7 days, no judgment, just data. You're not even having to change anything really. So, whatever you're doing right now, just plug it in and see where you're at. If you're somebody who has been obsessively tracking for a while, you probably don't need to be tracking. You already know that you're eating 15 or 1600 calories a day. And in that situation and with that type of person, I will say tracking isn't necessarily an essential at all. If anything, if we do track with that person, as long as they feel good about it, it's usually to work on increasing calories and increasing specific macronutrients and micronutrients. So, that as an aside. But you're tracking 5 to 7 days. Once you get that baseline, what you're going to do is see if you are consistently under eating, and if so, we'll talk about how to adjust that to slowly increase. Or you might be eating your calorie intake and it's just oddly distributed throughout the day. So you can look at patterns there as well. Maybe you only have 300 calories in the first half of your day. And the second half of your day, you're having like 2,000 calories. So we can look at how to kind of distribute that more evenly. So paying attention to patterns and looking at that average over your days and over your weeks as well. So, how can we actually assess this? We give our clients this estimating your calorie needs worksheet, and there's a video to go along with it to just get more in tune, especially if you feel like this is one of your barriers, one of your issues is just not eating enough consistently. And so, what we recommend first and foremost is finding your BMR or your basal metabolic rate. This is how many calories your body burns just doing nothing. So, to have a heartbeat and brain function and a pulse and things like that, you're just basically a vegetable. That's your BMR. We never want to eat close to our BMR. And as a matter of fact, if you use something like MyFitnessPal and you put in that weight loss is one of your goals, usually it puts you at your BMR. So that means that if you were eating that amount, don't move from your couch, basically. But what we want to actually do is find your calorie needs based on your activity level. So this is your TDEE or your total daily energy expenditure. So that's where you're looking at finding the calories that your body requires to have a healthy metabolism. And a lot of times people find that this is way higher than they thought it would be. But what you're going to do is find that, and you don't have to do anything. You just need to know what that number is. And then you're going to track again for that 5 to 7 days to see where you land, get a better idea objectively of how much you're eating. And then from there, you can slowly make adjustments towards your TDEE. If it's under, you're going to increase, obviously. And if it's over and you are struggling to lose weight, then you can decrease back to that TDEE. If you're hitting it consistently, that's great. You can stick with that. And that is how you know that you are truly at that TDEE. And I also want to note that for some people, you might not even need to make adjustments that drastically. It's just a matter of consistent intake rather than changing things. So you might find that one day you eat 1,200 calories. Oops. And then the next day you eat 2,500 calories. Oh, that's great. You're closer to your TDE. But what we want to find is how can we be more consistent in that, 2,100 calorie range as an example. So this is what that also calculator that is linked here with this client worksheet that we have. It goes to actually plugging in your metrics and then calculating BMR and how many calories your body actually needs. So this is as a 35-year-old woman who's 140 pounds, 5'4", and needs to eat around 1,900 to 2,000 calories a day. She's exercising 4 to 5 times a week. So quick example there. Now, like I said before, you want to make gradual adjustments, especially if you struggle with digestive issues. I will say that. And we work with a lot of women who have a combo of hormone and digestive issues. And it makes sense because it all overlaps. If your thyroid's slowing down, your enzyme production is slowing down, your stomach acid is slowing down. So usually you need to increase calories while also increasing your digestive capacity and your body's ability to properly break down those foods. You can't just increase things and not feel bloated. Honestly, you have to do it very slowly and intentionally while supporting your digestion. So what you can kind of pay attention to as you're tracking and noting things is, again, are you below your maintenance calories or TDEE regularly? Are you fluctuating between below and above? Are you maybe always over? And then increase or decrease calories accordingly. Or again, just be more consistent. And the most important thing I will say is, because it's not all about the numbers, is you have to listen to your body. 2,500 calories might work really well for one woman versus another one. It doesn't work well at all. And so you have to go back to that biofeedback tracker and figure out, how is it impacting your cravings, your energy, your hunger, your sleep. So as one example, like I said before, if I'm under eating, usually I don't sleep as well. I'm waking up frequently. I also notice, obviously, my energy the next day is in the toilet, and I have more cravings in the evening. So that's just an example for me. For you, it could be you start eating enough and you start going to the bathroom every day. So you make that connection between, oh, I increased my calories by 300 and now I'm pooping every single morning and my energy is back and I'm sleeping through the night. So, things to pay attention to when you're really listening to your body and you're not just blindly following these rules, everything changes. Okay, next up is macros. So, macronutrients are protein, carbs, and fats. You need all three in the right amounts to support thyroid hormone production and conversion. So, it's not only about producing enough, it's also about converting that inactive to that active thyroid hormone. Side note, that's why we get full thyroid panel, not just TSH. It's important for supporting hormone balance. So, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, all of those sex hormones. Also important for cortisol. And then for your metabolism, obviously, this is going to be influenced by those hormones. And last but not least is blood sugar stability, which I want to just take a moment to hone in on the importance of blood sugar as it relates to your hormones. And one of the best ways that we balance blood sugar with our food is by building out these macronutrients appropriately. There are a lot of things we do off of our plate as well that we're not going to get into around sunlight and sleep and stress and nervous system regulation. But right now, we're going to focus on these macronutrients. And really, one of the most important things for hormone balance is blood sugar balance. It's one of the most powerful ways to support your thyroid because of the way it influences stress and truly lowers stress in the body. If you're riding the blood sugar roller coaster day in and day out, that's a lot of work for your body. So you might not even feel stressed, but your body's riding that blood sugar roller coaster and it feels stressed. So every time your blood sugar crashes and you have hypoglycemic episodes, your body has to release cortisol to bring it back up. So without food, it needs some sort of energy. It's going to bring your blood sugar back up by way of cortisol, which breaks down your blood sugar basically and releases that sugar into the blood. And then it brings back up. And whenever cortisol is really high, we know that high cortisol works in opposition to your thyroid and it slows things down. And this is prolonged. This is over a period of time. It's not going to happen in, just acute cases of stress or here and there, but it's when it's chronic. And so that is how one of the ways, there are a lot of different ways, but one of the ways unstable blood sugar influences your energy, your mood, and your hormone function. So, as a picture, if you want to imagine kind of the trends we'll see between blood sugar, cortisol, thyroid, blood sugar drops, SOS signals get sent throughout the body, super stressful, life threatening if it goes too low, obviously. And so, what happens, so it doesn't go any lower, is cortisol increases, cortisol is released, and that increases blood sugar back up. So, it gets blood sugar back up even without food. And again, over time, high cortisol pushes non-essential functions down and it slows thyroid and it slows digestion and other hormone production and everything. So it slows down your thyroid. And it also, next step, and we'll talk about micronutrients in a second, it also is going to deplete vitamins and minerals. One of the ways that we're depleted in vitamins and minerals is by stress. We burn through things like magnesium and sodium and potassium when we're under more stress. So it's not just from not eating these foods or lacking them in the diet, it's actually from stress and us burning through them in that way. So, as a macros overview, and if you want to screenshot this or take notes, you definitely can if you're watching the replay and you can pause it. But I'm going to provide a resource for you that is kind of like a blood sugar balancing cheat sheet, if you will. And also with our clients and in the Well Nourish program, we go super in depth with all of this. And you have like your plug and play templates of protein, carbs, fats, best sources, how to combine them, meal ideas, recipe ideas, all of those things. So it truly becomes second nature and it feels so, so easy. But each one is important for different reasons as it relates to your thyroid. So we don't want to go low really in any of these or be super restrictive. We just have to be a little bit strategic. So protein is important for stabilizing blood sugar and slowing the digestion of carbs, which is why we always recommend pairing protein with carb sources or carbs with protein sources rather. Also, protein is important for building lean tissue, which lean tissue helps to stimulate your metabolism. And it's important for healthy hormones. We need it for thyroid hormone production and it's really important for neurotransmitter production, which influences your mood. So we create those neurotransmitters from amino acids and we get those amino acids from protein, which is why I find a lot of women who are on vegetarian or vegan diets not getting enough protein. They struggle a lot with their mood and their blood sugar. Next up is carbs. So we need glucose to convert T4 to T3, so inactive to active thyroid hormone. This happens in the liver. And we need carbs, we need glucose to do that. So it is very important when it comes to thyroid health. The other thing that I love about carbs is that they help keep stress in the body very low. I think a lot of people don't recognize it in this way. And we usually stress out about carbs and we let it increase stress in our brain and body. But when your body gets that quick, easy source of energy, it's very supportive and it lets your body know that it's safe. And that in turn will help your nervous system as well. And then lastly, it's a great source of potassium. A lot of carbohydrate rich food sources like fruits and root vegetables and potatoes are also very high in potassium, which is important for thyroid health. And then it's also really good for feeding that good gut bacteria and getting some good fiber in there. And then last but not least, we have fats. So fats are very important for helping to absorb key vitamins that we need for hormones and thyroid health. Low fat diet is probably the worst thing that you can do for hormones, especially if you're trying to regulate your cycle, trying to conceive, trying to get your period back, dealing with symptomatic periods or irregular cycles. And they help to absorb, like I said, those fat soluble vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. So when we do blood labs and we see somebody is very low in vitamin A and very low in vitamin D, and sometimes they even supplement with vitamin D and they're still low, usually that's a low fat or poor fat absorption issue. So your body isn't actually breaking down fat well. It is the backbone for steroid hormones. So we need cholesterol to create hormones. It's also very important for our brain. Also, fats are very anti-inflammatory. That's where like fish oil, omega-3s kind of get popular from is that they are anti-inflammatory, and that's because of the fatty acids. So fats are anti-inflammatory. And then lastly, it helps to balance blood sugar as well. And some fat sources, nuts and seeds and avocados as an example, also have fiber in them. So also very beneficial for your digestion and your gut health. Quick little cheat sheet on best sources because I always get this question and there's so much confusion around like what are the best sources of what. No foods are good or bad. It's just figuring out what really works best for you and sticking as close to nature and whole foods as possible. But protein, I recommend 30 to 40 grams per meal. If that feels difficult to you, it does not have to. I can give you very simple meal ideas that'll get you to that pretty easily without having to like add cottage cheese to every single thing. But best sources, bioavailable, easy to digest, are going to be from animal sources. You get the most bang for your buck, and they're super nutrient dense. Eggs, beef, fish, chicken, poultry, gelatin, and collagen are also great sources. Grass-fed dairy. All of those are going to be where we think about, okay, I'm getting my protein from this. Carbohydrates, I recommend leaning really heavily into plant sources like fruit, root vegetables, potatoes as well. I didn't list that, and I don't know why. Potatoes is literally one of the best carb sources, any and all sorts of potatoes. Rice, oats, sourdough, so any of those grains. Honey is also really good. And then fruit juices, as long as it's like plain fruit juice, obviously, that's going to be a carbohydrate source. And we recommend pairing carbs with protein to slow down the absorption. And then fats, best sources are from both plants and animals. We need grass-fed butter, olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. Egg yolks are fantastic. That's also where all of the vitamin A and the choline is. So do not ditch the egg yolks. And then full fat dairy as well, nuts and seeds. All of those are great fat sources. So how to actually build out your plate as kind of a visual, and the balanced plate template that I'm going to send to you will give you all of these mapped out, but I just want you to understand how to kind of combine things visually. So this combo is the best way to keep your thyroid, your hormones, and your blood sugar happy. So we want to build and combine protein, carbs, fat, and fiber. The fiber overlaps with the carbs and fats. So you kind of can get both of those together. And this combination is going to help to keep you full, focused, and fueled all throughout the day. So that we'll talk about meal timing, but you can go 3 to 4 hours without eating and you don't feel hungry. And then again, it also is going to keep stress off of your thyroid because you're preventing those blood sugar swings. So this is the blood sugar balancing meal guide that I mentioned, and some examples of breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. There's also like a post workout section there as well, and more around the meal template. And if you want to mix and match your protein, carbs, fat sources, you can do that. So if you want this, I will end up putting the link below this video, but you can also DM me on Instagram. Just DM me part 3, and I'll know that that is for this blood sugar balancing meal guide, and I can send this over. Next up is micronutrients. So we're really going to focus on minerals specifically. There are specific minerals and vitamins that are important for thyroid health. And I also just want to preface this by saying this isn't you supplementing with all these different things. It's you focusing on getting it through food sources and supporting your body's ability to digest and break them down well. Thyroid health is very mineral intensive, so it relies on nutrients to function properly. So when I see certain numbers off, TSH high or free T3 low, I'm thinking what minerals, what vitamins is your body actually missing? And a lot of these things they're depleted by stress, by hormonal birth control, by gut issues and poor absorption, and then also just by not eating enough or eating a nutrient poor diet. And that could be a standard American diet, yes, but it can also be quote unquote clean eating or restrictive eating. So here are some of the key ones that you can think about supporting. I'm actually not going to read off all of the different functions of these, but I just want to highlight which ones are important. Copper, magnesium, selenium, potassium, sodium, iron, and iodine. That is like a super star for your thyroid hormones. If you have autoimmune related thyroid like Graves or disease, I do recommend working with somebody before adding in more iodine. But for a lot of these, we can get them through food sources, and that is a top priority. Again, we're not supplementing with copper. You don't want to do that in isolation. You want to pair it with, we'll talk about this in a second, but you want to pair it with vitamin A and with B vitamins and with iron to help with that iron recycling system. And then you also don't want to just blindly supplement with something like iron. I don't ever recommend supplementing with iron. But something like magnesium, this is the one that does have a time and place for supplementation because it's so hard to get enough of it through food. So I will say that, and this is one of the go-tos, especially if you are somebody who is under a lot of stress. And we can see this with HTMA test as well, where all of these mineral levels are, but we need it for thyroid production and for stress resiliency. So we can't skip it. But a lot of these, again, it's not just about producing enough thyroid hormone, it's about being able to use it, get it into the cell, and also it's important for the conversion of inactive to active thyroid hormone. So, lots of important reasons to focus on these. And then also specific vitamins. Vitamin A, we actually really need this to help activate the thyroid receptors on the cell. So maybe you have enough thyroid hormones, but you're still hypothyroid in your symptoms. You likely need vitamin A. We also see this in clients who have very high TSH levels. B vitamins, especially B12, is very important, and B6. We need vitamin C for thyroid and for adrenals. That's like a superstar. Also, side note, vitamin C is really helpful for supporting progesterone production. And then vitamin D. And vitamin D is specifically helpful for those with Hashimoto's or elevated antibodies. And that is because it's very supportive and protective for your immune system. So, some real food sources of these, that's not what we typically think of as, oh, I'll eat more fruits and vegetables. We can get very specific with nutrient dense sources. And a lot of these go back to very whole foods that our body is designed to eat. So, again, I'm not going to list off all of the different things that these contain, but you can see how nutrient dense they are and how they check off a lot of those boxes with the vitamins and minerals that I just went over. So grass-fed dairy, quality dairy, we won't go down a dairy rabbit hole. A lot of people think you have to remove it because it's inflammatory, but usually it's if you're reacting to it, there's something going on internally with your gut. And You can also get a lot out of goat forms of dairy. They're usually easier to digest, lower in histamines. So grass-fed dairy, always try to incorporate that. Animal proteins are going to be super nutrient dense. Beef liver, and if you can't eat beef liver, you can supplement with it. Shellfish, especially oysters and shrimp, they are powerhouses for your thyroid. And fish, especially fatty fish, is fantastic. Bone broth with a little bit of sea salt in it, super mineral rich, and also just an easy thing to add to anything. So you can cook your veggies in it, you can cook your rice in it, you can just sip it out of the mug. Sea veggies, that's going to be a great source of iodine. There's these little like kelp flakes that I really like adding to things. Makes it super easy, or like seaweed salad, things like that. Fruits, potatoes, and root vegetables. I grouped all these together because they're like your plant sources and also carbohydrates. So those again will where you get a lot of potassium, magnesium, vitamin C, especially in a lot of those fruits, and copper as well in citrus fruits. And then mineral mocktails. This is one of my favorite ways to get an extra mineral bump. And we usually customize this based on the HTMA, the hair tissue mineral analysis that I'll talk about in part 4 when we go over labs. But this is basically any combo of potassium, sodium, and magnesium, and then a vitamin C source. That's going to be supportive for your thyroid and for your adrenals. I also do have a mineral mocktail guide. I have so many free resources, but if you want that, just DM me minerals and I'll send you the full guide. These are some drink recipes, but there's also some food sources listed there as well. Last but not least, we have to talk about meal timing. So you cannot skip this because when you eat is just as important as what you eat, especially for your thyroid and your cortisol levels and your blood sugar, like I talked about before. But if you are, for example, skipping breakfast, like I talked about in the last series or the last part when we talked about the mistakes around intermittent fasting, or if you're just going too long without eating, you eat breakfast and then you skip lunch, or you wait from lunch at noon until like 7 or 8 p.m. to eat dinner, that's too long. You're going to experience blood sugar crashes. You're going to experience cortisol spikes. Your body's going to be in that fight or flight stressed out state. And that's when your thyroid function actually takes a hit. So fasting is interpreted by the body as a stressor. And over time, it does do more damage than good, especially when it comes to your hormones, if you're dealing with all these other stressors as well. So if you have fatigue or hormone imbalances, cycle issues, fertility challenges, hair loss, any of those things, I recommend consistent and predictable meals. That is what your body loves. That is what's going to help it to thrive. So what you can do instead, and it doesn't have to be complicated, we can simplify this so much and we can enjoy our meals. We eat within an hour to 2 hours of waking. We also drink minerals before we drink coffee or do anything else. Aim for 3 balanced meals. So pick your 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, put them on your calendar, 20, 30 minutes, and then a snack. Usually I find a lot of people do well with a snack in the late afternoon. And then you also want to make sure you're not going longer than 4 to 5 hours between meals. And lastly, kind of a pro tip I feel like a lot of people don't talk about is eating with your circadian rhythm. So you want to eat when the sun is out. If you are waiting until noon to have your first meal and then you're eating into the evening at like 8 p.m., that's working against your circadian clock. So what's better is eating more during the day, making sure you have enough with breakfast, enough with lunch. And if you want to kind of taper down with dinner, you can do it then. So an example day would be breakfast 8 a.m., lunch 12 p.m., snack 3 p.m., dinner 6 p.m. Super simple. And if you have something going on during this time, maybe you're running an errand or you have an appointment, plan to eat before or plan to eat after that. Just don't forget to eat. So one of the key takeaways here that I really want to drive home in figuring all of this out for yourself too is, again, not blindly following rules or just doing what you see someone else doing. You have to actually listen to your body, pay attention to how you feel before and after meals and how that relates to your macronutrient balance, your calorie balance, your meal timing. Figure out what works best for you. And also, if you need help with this, that's where having a coach and practitioner actually comes in handy. Things to pay attention to that we might completely overlook. We just eat and then we're done and we move on. But in between your meals, are you getting shaky, anxious, irritable, tired? Are you cold between meals? That's a huge red flag. You're not eating enough. That could mean that you're just under eating chronically or you're going too long between meals. So if you have breakfast at 8 a.m. and you eat lunch at 2 p.m. and you feel anxious all morning long, or you have a headache, that makes a lot of sense. And another thing, just patterns to pay attention to, this oftentimes can relate to your blood sugar. And we have a full blood sugar assessment that we do with clients too. So if you're really interested in pinpointing, like, what is low blood sugar? What is high blood sugar? Which one do I fall into? What is going on with my blood sugar? We also use a continuous glucose monitor to look at your blood sugar patterns throughout the day. But are you getting hangry between meals? Are you crashing after a meal? Are you having cravings in the evening or at 3 p.m.? That can tell you so much about the amount of food you're eating and your blood sugar as well. So you might not be eating enough. You might be riding a blood sugar roller coaster. All these things are fixable. So that's another point I want to drive home is if you're dealing with mood swings or you have headaches or you have cravings or you're getting irritable, all these things we can adjust are according to this nutrition framework to work on improving them. And yeah, the last point I want to make here is that you do not need to starve or restrict or guess your way to better thyroid health when it comes to nutrition. And if you're Googling things, and you're not getting the answers that you're looking for, we have all of this built out for you in the Well Nourished program. And this is what we work on with clients when we customize their plans. We look at their lab data, we look at what they're doing now, we figure out where there's gaps, and we can fix it pretty quickly and easily with a realistic timeline. So, what you really need to do is nourish your body consistently with real food, real nutrients, minerals, vitamins, protein, carbs, fats, and predictable meal timing that helps to support your blood sugar balance. So if you take nothing else away from part 3, let it be this. This is kind of the summary of what to do to eat for your thyroid and your hormones. In part 4, I'm going to talk about how to actually test instead of guessing, what labs I use with clients, and how we uncover the reasons behind your symptoms, the reason that you're feeling off. And this is even if your doctor says everything looks normal, something is off, it's not normal. We can clearly identify that with the right labs. And a final reminder, if you haven't grabbed this thyroid and metabolism biofeedback tracker yet, you can DM me on Instagram and I'll send it to you, or you can grab it with the link in the first 2 videos. And then lastly, this blood sugar balancing meal guide, you can DM me on Instagram part 3 and I'll send this to you, or you can grab it with the link below this video. All right, that is all for part 3. I hope this is helpful. I know I covered a lot of information. Be sure to also share this with friend, family member, anybody you know, girlfriend who would benefit from this because they probably need to hear it. They probably need this information, especially if they're struggling with their hormones and their thyroid and they're confused as to what to eat or how to approach food with this more nourishing lens. So until next time, I hope this is helpful for you and I will see you in part 4. Bye.